being here with us, taking your time for the panel Power, Pressure and Succession, Future Scenarios on Leadership in Russia. I expect a very open, a very exciting discussion today with former Prime Minister Mikhail KASYANOV. Dear Prime Minister, thank you so much for taking your time and for accepting the invitation to be here with us at the forum. You've been praised for the systemic reforms that you have undertook as Deputy Finance Minister, and then Prime Minister, for reconnecting Russia with Europe and with the world. After the fall of communism and in early 2000s, well, your reforms have ensured Russia access to international capital markets. It provided financing of the Soviet debt. You provided a new framework when it comes to a more balanced framework of pension calculations, and of course, needless to say, the most important was the tax reform, which was considered among the best pieces of legislation that was there at that time back in the days. In 2004, your government fell, but it didn't fall because of its lack of results. On the contrary, but it fell because back then, between you and the then President and current President of the Russian Federation, there were different views regarding the course of the state. So what would be the path that Russia would actually take within the next couple of years? Since your government fell, you've been probably one of the starkest voices in actually depicting the shortcomings of that course of the state. Well, fast forwarding, in 2023 you've been added to the list of foreign agents, and late in 2025, if I'm not wrong, together with fellow economists Sergei Guriev and Kirill Martynov, you've been added to the list of extremists and terrorists. Of course, as a historian, I cannot help myself to ask, how is it possible that a very successful prime minister, one of the brightest economists that Russia had in decades, becomes part of that list? But of course, now it's not about historical fascinations, but actually keeping in mind all these elements at hand. I would kindly ask you to dig a bit into the latest pieces of information that we have retrieved from Russia lately on political, economical and social affairs, and try to see what is it that we can expect in the upcoming months and years, and if there is a way to look more brightful when it comes to the Russian-European relations, or possibly finding a common ground in the future. Without further ado, I will dive into the long queue of questions that I have, by asking you, given that we've heard recently that from the very top of the Russian elite, the fact that there is an end approaching when it comes to the war in Ukraine. So again, I cannot help myself and ask, we've heard in the panel just before us, more or less the same question. is there a meaningful way of ending this war? Is there a hope that we will see an end to the bloodshed?
Cosmin, thank you very much indeed for nice words about me, just and your deep understanding what's going on just in Russia and the interest of this, and I'm sure that we can explore quite a bit on that. First, just talking about just the change of the overall path of the state development, etc., just as you mentioned, I would say that it was clear, that started to be clear for me in 2003, and last year our joint work together with President Putin, that he has something different in mind. Differently what we agreed with him just when we start our joint work in 2000. And there were some problems and disputes between two of us. One of them that's not supporting my reforms on the gas sector, not supporting my reform over the administrative reform, which I wanted to cut government responsibilities and regulations and controls, etc., to free society and to free businesses, and also attitude to Ukraine. And that time already there were some features that Putin didn't like my style of negotiating everything with the Ukrainian government, which I put it in our countries on equal footing and would like equal partners. But Putin didn't like this. He believed that somehow just not quite complete country Ukraine. But it is how just all our disagreements started. But talking today about what you're referring to about the prospects, I think we don't have positive signals in this moment in terms of war, because the overall situation is such that already for 4 years Putin managed to keep the whole environment in Russia, I mean in terms of public control and the population control and the economy just on a quite, I would say, sustainable from his point of view, just position. And we can say even more that how he come to this. Let's remember just the NATO summit here in Bucharest in May 2004. 2008, when there was a discussion just of providing roadmap for Ukraine and Georgia, and there was a discussion, and yesterday we've heard that in this particular room, there was a lunch between Putin and Chancellor Merkel, where they decided not to provide, Putin just managed to ensure Merkel not to provide just roadmap to Ukraine and Georgia. And the result we see a few months after, just full invasion of Georgia and occupation of 1/3 of Georgian territory. That was first signal. And what happened afterwards, we can easily recall 3 months after just all these ceasefire plans, so-called Sarkozy plan. At that time, President Sarkozy was chair of the European Council. And this ceasefire plan was not implemented by any point, any single point, even more, just as I said. Putin occupied 1/3 of Georgian territory. But European Union came back to Putin with business as usual. And all those profitable projects, including Nord Stream 2 and others, just started to be implemented. And what happened with the United States? The US government decided to reset, to launch a reset, just another friendship, tried to have a friendship with the regime. But it was already clear that it would not work at all. But Putin taken as a special permission given by the West. That is the behavior the West accepts him to undertake. And that's why just his further steps in 4 years afterwards, annexation of Crimea, also was accepted without just expressing deep concern, or with expressing deep concern, but not more than that. That was the Putin's policy that he does what the West allows him to do. Today, coming back to your question, what we have today, I don't see that Mr. Putin is prepared to give any concessions. any concessions. Despite of the fact that the economy started contracting this year, the first quarter already, even official figure just already demonstrate that there is a squeeze of GDP by 0.8%. By independent economists calculating maybe at already minus 1.5%, but at only one quarter. Although recession, the economists will call the recession start when we have two consecutive quarters here. But right now we cannot see that recession started, but definitely just the stagnation already in place, and even stagflation, because inflation is still very high, and key central bank interest rate is very high. But why I'm saying just I cannot see any positive signals? Putin managed to control the society by the major instrument, fear. He created the feeling of fear in every family. And he believes that patience of Russian people is endless. Not endless, and that's one issue. And second, on economy, right now, because of war in Gulf, we know just what the oil price is about. And the United States lifted their sanctions. That's why right now just oil price and foreign exchange inflow into Russia is $95 per barrel, not 40 as it was 2 months ago. Not 45, but almost 195. It means just all the budgetary problems which occurred in the first quarter would be covered by this additional revenue. And I don't think just the war stops and suddenly, and I don't believe that oil price will restore on a stable basis like $60 per barrel. It means Putin will have a lot of abilities to finance the war because of this additional revenue he will be getting during this year.
Thank you so much for this overarching image of what we have today. But let's tap into at least some of these points, and I will take the lion's share here, given the fact that I have temporarily the role of being here with you on the scene. Then I will open up to the public for questions. First, you said that one of the main things that drives Russia now is the fear, so basically the capability of the system to instill more fear. But I would try to ask you now, what is the meaningful? Of course, surveys are a very difficult thing in most of the countries, but of course, when you look into Russia, probably that's even more. What is the level of content or discontent when it comes to the current course of the state among the Russian population? Also, looking a bit wider, looking a bit into militarization, looking a bit into the educational transformation, looking a bit into the integration pathways, and also the economic model that the state has. Is this important for the Russians? Are they happy with what happens? Aren't they happy with what happens?
We shall divide just different parts of population. Just, just in Russia, even according to official statistics, just more than 20 million people live under the level of poverty, under the poverty line. But if we will get just another statistic, maybe just a more European methodology, just what is the poverty line is about. Yeah? Maybe it will be not 20, but maybe 30 or maybe 40 million people. But they never was interested in any political development and any models, whatever discussion what you have just mentioned. And they thinking about how to survive, how to feed their families, and how just to get their job. Maybe they have 2 jobs simultaneously to feed their families to survive. That's why they are indifferent for this. When we can talk about just the people living in the big cities, so middle class or something like this, educated people who have access to internet. There's approximately 20 million people who still now, despite of the problems and squeezing and pressing the ability to get internet, they have VPNs and they can have ability to get information from outside, including us, including you and others but those people who are interested in, who have an interest to sit down and open internet and find some information. But majority of Russians, they don't do this. They simply come after their job home, switch on TV set and see just propaganda channel. And they will see just Russia as Putin wants it to demonstrate. They see the West as ugly Americans who wants to deprive Russia of its sovereignty and take Russia's oil and gas, etc. All this foolish propaganda just goes every day. And that's why this very difficult would be, if we say after Putin's period of time, just how to clean people's mind and how to let them understand their destiny in their hands. That will be difficult process for any political group which will come to the power after Putin.
Continuing on this topic, on actually building narratives that work for the people, how do you think the narrative will actually develop when it comes to the war, in the case the war actually ends? But not only, we've heard several rumors that there are already some ideas and some plans in order to create the political landscape and the noise in order to show that this was a victorious war and it has actually reached its targets and so on and so forth. But I was wondering, given the fact that you've been at the very core of the state, how would you assess this task, and how successful can it be to show that this was a victorious war, given the reality that, well, most of the people here know from the front line? How would these work, and how would the future of Russia look like in such a mindset?
That is another part that as I said, many people, I'm talking mostly just about people just living in big cities. It's like Moscow, St. Petersburg, Yekaterinburg, Samara, other big cities where just people will not participate in the war because Putin didn't want to touch them. They understand that that is a driving force for any changes. That's why all those people who was taken for the front line, that's from small cities. And even statistics show that mostly people who was killed in the front line, that was people living in the villages and small towns, up to 100,000 people population. But when we're talking about cities with million population, none of them just were there on the front. And they continue to live as it's nothing going on, as it just special operation goes somewhere there. But these people, educated people, and they, of course, they cannot just pass by just what everything is going, and they have some kind of cognitive dissonance because just they cannot admit that the government of their country just invade on a sovereign neighbor and killing civilians, thousands of civilians every day. That is something awful, and they're closing their eyes and simply just hate Putin's regime, but they're trying to survive and waiting for future. But the atmosphere of fear, as I mentioned, they didn't allow them to demonstrate. As we led all this demonstration in supporting Ukraine after annexation of Crimea, and when my friend and my political partner Boris Nemtsov was killed afterwards, just on the wall of Kremlin, and that time that was allowed for us to go on the streets. But now it is not possible for individual demonstration because people immediately will be put in jail, and that's the issue. But the fatigue already came, not only for ordinary people, but also for ruling elite. Absolute majority of people around Putin would like to stop the war. Of course, all of them wanted to stop the war on their Putin's conditions, It means capitulation of Ukraine. But in any case, they believe, they already see that problems growing, and there are no rules inside. Business is an awful situation because right now there are no rules for business. There is the redistribution of property and something like this. I would say that the ruling Putin's business group just taking everything for other businesses, and that is the awful situation for them. And of course, they think that could be. My prediction is that the war will stop, not in totality, but the ceasefire will come without special agreement, by stoppage of a real hard fight. As it happens already now, because there is no move on the front line already for several months. And there is a deadline for 20 kilometers because of drones. It could be 50 kilometers because of drones. And Ukraine already have an advantage in the drones development and the long range and the middle range and on the front line. That's already something just already changed the whole situation. And furthermore, answering your questions, how just Putin can develop and present this as a victory. I think it's very easy for him. They already started, through propaganda, preparing the environment for the end of the war as a victorious end for Putin. Why? They say, finally, we liberated Russian-speaking people from this Nazi pressure, etc., etc. Finally, we got just the land corridor from Crimea to mainland. Finally, we got another 4 million people of our citizens voting for us, for Putin. Yeah. And finally, just we demonstrated for the whole world we're the best army in the world. We fought with the 50 countries of NATO and won this war. It's something like that. Yeah. That will be eaten by population, foolish by propaganda for many, many years. But it will not be stable peace. That what I am afraid is absolutely the dangerous situation. That's why when we talking about Ukraine and negotiations with the European Union, Britain, Canada, and with the United States, and talking about security guarantees, that's a crucial point. There could not be ceasefire without immediate security guarantees for Ukraine. Otherwise, just revenge Putin will be dreaming about.
Yeah, quite a dark
reality.
Yes, of course. But it's dark nonetheless. Now, you pointed two things that are very, directly connected with the title of our panel, and that is the people from the front line and the nature of the regime. And that's very interesting because we've heard recently the fact that, well, there are various numbers being advanced, but we've heard that a certain amount of people from the front line will actually are supposed to become members of the Duma in the upcoming elections. And basically they will be the backbone of the new elite in Russia. How would that influence the way Russia would look like in the future? One. Second, will that be, as it has been already advanced again in the public environment, will that be part of the president's legacy? And third, would that be the cradle to actually extract the future leading figure of Russia in the upcoming years?
I think that we should take this as rhetorics, first of all. That is not a serious development. And of course, Putin cannot do anything rather than just to describe these people that you have a brightest future, etc. You will get education, you will get social positions, etc., etc. seats in Duma, local government, local parliaments, maybe local governments, but in reality, reality doesn't demonstrate this. We already see, because it's this program or rhetorics going for a couple of years, but there is no results on that. And even right now, we see just the disputes inside Russia between among existing political groups, which is of course all pro-Putin's here, but which they're preparing for so-called elections, which will soon be just this autumn to Duma. And I don't think there will be a considerable part of deputies appointed / elected, appointed to Duma from these veterans of front lines. Because just local elites and in Moscow, they don't want them to play a considerable role. Maybe for demonstration of existence of this process, something like 10, 15 people maximum out of 450. That is nothing in terms of real decision-making process in Duma. That's why I don't think that will be a big problem for that. The problem will be just when the war stops, and just what to do with these more than 1 million soldiers on the front line. That is not a problem, but I think Putin already thinking about this. First, I believe that he will continue keeping them in the military barracks, allowing to go to the civilian life, but those people will understand that they're getting now in the military 3 times more than they potentially maximum could get on the civilian industry, on civilian job. That's why just the majority of them would continue staying in the army. Of course, Putin will reduce a little bit just payment to them. It will be overall reduction of military expenditure, but they will be kept there. That's why for future operations, depending on the external environment about Russia, Putin's Russia will continue to be ready for any other operations, for any other invasion if the West allows this to do. And military production will continue to be on the same level. And that's now one of the most driving force of the Russian economy, and the old storages are empty. And they have to produce a lot. Few years it could be gradual decrease of expenditure and volumes of production. But that would be the reality. There would not be complete, I would say, change of overall position of industry and overall position in the society.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have just a quick follow-up question on that, but my main point is also connected to the economy. So basically what you're telling me is that, and as you're anticipating that the military-industrial complex will continue to be operational fully even if the fighting will stop at any time soon. Okay. But now I will make a very dreadful step and actually step into your field, into economy. All these news that we've heard regarding the deficit, regarding the depletion of the National Welfare Fund, and so on and so forth, the big hole of the deficit that was last year, the hole that is in the first quarter of this year, and I mean, is this a lot of Western cognitive dissonance, or is it meaningful disruption of economy? Is it systematic? Is it something that is really connected with the sanctions? I mean, these are questions that I think they're very much twisted in the Western side. So I think it would be very useful for us to understand from, again, one of the brightest economists Russia has, how the situation looks like.
Sanctions, of course, work. And they've been working for already 4 years. And in fact, not all of them effective. Some of them, yes, of course, and some not. What is the most effective sanction? That was the decision of G7 decision December 2022, the price cap for oil. As a result of that decision, first quarter of 2023, the revenue, oil revenue reduced by 50%. Immediately, there was a growing deficit. Then just the shadow fleet appeared, and control over sanctions, on sanctions doesn't exist. The Americans arrested 6 vessels out of 600, and that is simply just demonstration of potential ability. But that exists. Second, of course, decision of President Trump. That was the only decision of President Trump in terms of sanctions. That's sanctioning of oil sector of Russia. Right now, altogether, including Biden's sanctions, altogether that like 70% of Russian oil production under sanctions. Now U.S. lifted these sanctions. That's why we have a different period of time for that. But coming back to overall state of economy, that other sanctions also worked, and right now almost all civilian industry just and squeezing on their production. For instance, coal industry, which was quite important in terms of export as well, minus 15%. Wood processing, minus 10%. Metallurgy, minus 6%. And everywhere minus. Only military production grows. That's why they reported by the end of the 2025 that GDP grew by almost 1%, something less than that, but something like this. But independent economists, if we take other methodology to calculate the same data of Rosstat, our statistic agency, if you have a different methodology, you see just already stagnation. There was no 95, as the end of 95, there was no economic growth. That was zero. Right now we have, we have at least 1 or 1.5% minus, that's already just we're going to close to recession. But that's not a collapse. That's not a tragedy. It's not a situation like just tomorrow, just everything will fall down. Absolutely not. What is the deficit? Just all these 4 years, Putin's government were on the key positions in economic positions, people from my cabinet work for. They know how to do this, although they compromise with their soil and soil and just now supporting Putin. But all these 4 years, Russian deficit never increased 5% of GDP. Now just we in Bucharest, in Romania. In Romania, just it's 9% deficit of GDP right now. Russia's ratio, debt ratio, is absolutely fabulous. It's like 15-20% only, not 100% like big European countries. That's why just general terms of economy is okay. The problem is that because of sanctions, because of stop of trade between Europe and Russia facing problems and switch all the trading ties to China. China now just the major window of opportunities, major window for Putin to the open world. And in terms of trade, in 2021, the Russia's trade with European Union was 40%. Now it is 14%. In 1991, China's trade with China in Russia's term was 14%. Now it's 35. Almost it's twist. That right now that is the issue. China is a major player on pressing Russia to stop the war. If, together with the European Union and the United States, China would step in and will undertake some slightest efforts to press Putin, that will be a real achievement of Putin's ability to finance the war further on.
Thank you so much on this economic overview. As much as I would like to continue, I have plenty of questions queued up. I would like now to open up the floor for the questions here in the audience. If that would be fine, I would propose to collect them in batches so that you can attack them more in a nutshell, so to say. Please keep the questions as short as possible, and of course limit the comments if possible. Please.
Daniel Gerlach, I'm from Germany. I'm a Middle East specialist, not a Russia specialist, and I wonder, what we read in our newspapers and our analysis is very much focused on the psychology of Mr. Putin. Even from the most renowned Russian experts and journalists, we get a lot about sometimes speculative approaches about Mr. Putin's decision-making. Now, in Middle East analysis, what we do is we try to discern the elements in a regime, the coup-proofing mechanisms, who is involved in what, and do you think there is a deficit in our European analysis about the interior dynamics in Russian power, or is this all just like la polar, irrelevant, because everything that matters is the psychology and the decision-making of Mr. Putin himself? Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Do we have a second question?
If I answer this.
Yes, we have a second question here, I think. If I mislead, I'm sorry there, but then we'll get back to you.
Thank you very much for your vibrant discussion. It's always a pleasure to hear you and to have your inputs. My name is Ilana Rotaru. I'm a senior expert in the Strategy Center and also a professor at West University of Timișoara. You repeatedly said, even today, I think twice, said that Putin does what West allows him to do. Now you have a different, let's say, background, and also you have new clues about what this West means. And it's my question about did Trump administration allows him to do something, or did Trump administration didn't allow him to do something regarding the previous meetings and discussions between Putin and Trump?
Okay, thank you. I'll get back to the gentleman there in a second, because these are very connected. So if that's not connected with the ideology, mindset, and what is the President Putin allowed to do, then maybe we can move to the second batch. Then, yeah, please.
All right, just in terms of what Europe can do among psychology. Psychology is not just understanding of psychology. It's an important thing for psychologists and I would say maybe intelligence services, but for politicians, important thing is just to understand what Europe is about and what Russia is about. I mean, in terms of capacity, in terms of ability and capability. What we're talking about Russia. Russia right now represents or produces 2% of world's GDP. 2% of world's GDP. European Union produces 25% of world's GDP. What is the capability and military capability as well? It's much stronger. And what Europe is lacking now, just decisiveness. Just to make a decision and to move. The United States also have produced 25% of GDP. If Europe and the US are together and transatlantic union, the unity restore, it means 50% of world's GDP and 2% with Putin's ability to do. That's very easy to set up the whole problems. But that is the problem of political will, of understanding. There is a big difference in understanding. If in Europe, all European leaders understand that who is the aggressor and who is the victim, and they would like just the victim to be punished, and the aggressor will be punished and put an appropriate footing here. While in the U.S., President Trump and his administration believe that there are two regional leaders just who hate each other and that they fight because of this. This is a wrong understanding. It is misunderstanding. There are a lot of, in the US, there are a lot of analysts and specialists understanding in a deep, thorough managers all just what's going on in Russia and what Putin is about and his ambitions, etc. But that is the problem at the moment. And talking about what, as I already started turning on that what Mr. Putin saying that the spirit of Anchorage, where he was paid a full respect for the whole world on a red carpet and shaking hands, etc., almost kissing. Not yet, but almost, yeah. And discussion on fruitful projects in Russia, exploring Russia's Arctic and profitable projects for US companies, and etc., etc., etc. And Putin wants Mr. Trump to understand that in the relations between Russia and the United States, the war in Ukraine, it is miserable things. And he's asking Mr. Trump, let me finish this stuff and we will explore what we have great plans. What about non-proliferation process of and all these nuclear strategic things about it? Let's come back to this discussion. We are two leading nations. This is a dream of Mr. Putin to sit down together with the President of the United States, not necessarily Trump, but any, so that it will be, and getting respect and just, I would say, the fear that they're ruling the whole world, and they discuss the fate of all the countries in the world. That is his dream. And that's why what Mr. Trump is not doing, he doesn't understand that Putin is a threat for every nation around, and maybe for the United States too.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Tomasz Chmura. I represent Cosmin Foundation and Warsaw Security Forum, another security-related event here in the region. My question is on the Russia-China relations. Mr. Prime Minister mentioned that China is absolutely significant for keeping the relations, keeping Russia's economy going. So, many Western analysts emphasize the distrust between Russia and China in strategic terms, that it's kind of the marriage of convenience still. So my question is, how do you assess the state of the relations between Russia and China, and how as the West we can exploit this division, this distrust between Beijing and Moscow? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other question that we might raise, please?
Hello, Alisher Adeshev from Kazakhstan Institute for Strategic Studies. I would like to ask you about the current and future relations of Russia with post-Soviet countries, and especially with Kazakhstan. We see that current relations between two countries are formally and officially very good, but we also have another track, is I would say propaganda track, and what we see in media from the Russian experts who have some issues about the Kazakh territory of northern Kazakhstan. Can you explain what's happening in Russian-Kazakhstan relations, and what the future of these relations could look like? Thank you.
Thank you, and we could collect one more if there is an urgent question. If not, then we will close it here and we'll give Prime Minister the possibility to answer. No urgent matter, so
China.
Please.
All right.
China and Kazakhstan, two easy neighbors for Russia. Yeah. Oh, there was a question. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. I'm very sorry.
China, yeah, on China.
I'm sorry. There is another question there. We need a microphone somewhere in the middle, please.
Apologies, I'm going to ask the question in Romanian. You said earlier that what European Union lacks is a determination to act together. Please tell me what would be that, let's say, that weapon, that sanction, that measure that the European Union could take in order to hurt Putin as much as possible.
So China, Kazakhstan, and the hardest measure at EU level.
Let's start the easiest question, yeah, what Europe can do. It's easy. Europe takes a consistent position. That's very, very good. The issue is whether Europe continue to believe that United States is a reliable partner and waiting when just the relations would be reset in a normal manner, and then by joint efforts would be easy to resolve this problem, as I described, just pressing Putin, etc. Or other aspect, other version, other scenario, that United States continue to behave in the way more isolative manner, and Europe should defend and create just European security architecture just in their own way. That's already, as President Trump already said, just you now just take care of yourselves. And that's what already this decision, I think, already in the mind of all political leaders here in Europe. As a result, not just commitment of political leaders, but also decisions of almost all parliaments in all European countries already adopted to increase military expenditure up to 5% of GDP. That is almost the level of the Cold War with Soviet Union. That's good thing in terms of preparation for the actual security of the nations living in Europe and potential battle of Putin's aggression. But maybe it's not enough. Maybe it should be done a little bit more. Your military experts would explain you in details how that should be prepared, how just the new war operates, and what Putin capable to do if he decides to do something else. I think that is already an agenda. I cannot just add to analysis which every prime minister in Europe already has on that case. But it should be a speedy process of doing this, not just to put it on a last point on the agenda. China. Yeah, China, as I said, that the major opportunity for Putin to survive, and almost I would say Chinese yuan became almost I would say reserve currency in Russia, because of sanctions on euro, on dollar, etc., etc. It's very, very much a big dependence. Another big issue to consider, that China is not seeing Russia as some kind of partner to integrate economies or something like that. It's simply like a market. All these rhetorics about investment of Chinese capital into Russian production is absolutely zero. It's only rhetorics. It's only selling their products and buy Russian products on a cheap price. Half price for oil, half price for gas and others. A lot of taking of wood products, etc. And there is a huge infiltration of Chinese people into Russian territory for permanent leave. In fact, if you take a map and will see just the border between Russia and China, but you will notice that provinces along the border with Russia, Chinese provinces, that's approximately 250 million people living there, 250 million people living there, while on the Russia's part, after the Urals, only 16 million people. And that was for China. That's important thing just to, and they already started to publishing even maps, important thing just to have an influence on that, and maybe on the future to use it as their territory. They already publishing by the ministry, one of the, I don't remember the name, Minister of Communication or something like that, they published 2 years ago, a year ago, the map and distributed the map where just the all half of Siberia and all Far East already part, and Sakhalin Island as well, that's part of China. And that's why Chinese vision that Russia, that is supporting country, but not a great partner. And in terms of cooperation and relations and cards and playing game with the United States, Russia is nothing. If United States provides to China some kind of very profitable things to cooperation and good cooperation, the China will play this card and forget about Russia. That's why I'm saying that to settle the problem with the war and settle the problem with the Putin's regime and threat of this regime, China could play a very considerable role.
In Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, it's very easy. Yes, relations is good, and President Tokayev, of course, he's very experienced and diplomat and politician, and he managed to make a balance, simultaneously increasing relations with the United States and Europe, and keeping just good relations and coming to Moscow to demonstrate relations, because he understands that Putin needs some kind of demonstration, respect. And he's doing this, coming to even for the parade, etc., etc. But in fact, we see that there is a change even in statistics and change in the trade and change on the capital flow, and it's already completely different. That's already a balancing thing. It means the Kazakhstan is more prepared for future if something will be happen, that already not so dependent on Russia. I think it's right policy, national policy of Kazakhstan leadership.
Prime Minister, thank you so much for this. We're absolutely in time. We've run late, but look at this. Thank you for all the ideas that you shared with us, for, well, a bit dark and gloomy at times, points that you made. Thank the audience for being here. And
in any case, let me say just the last few words. In any case, just first, thank you just for the interest to my country, Russia. And in any case, just we should all understand that if we'd like Russia will not be a threat, we should dream about democratic Russia. It's not an easy process. It will not go tomorrow, not right after Putin, but 10 years after could come. And Russian people should get again the chance to reconfirm the democratic choice.
And there you go. We have a positive note. Thank you for that. Thank you.